Hey there, mudroomers. It is Carmen here, and today we are going to go through a glazing tutorial to glaze this mug. This is a fun technique that utilizes EZ Strokes as well as our stoneware glazes, fired to cone 6. So to start, we're using our stoneware bisque mug, the Carmen mug. And to prepare, first we're going to get our EZ Strokes ready. The EZ Strokes are recommended to be mixed with this Thin and Shade accessory product. So we are going to do just that. And that'll help the glaze go on nice and smooth. As you can see there, it's a little bit thick. So we have each of those. And we'll just mix a couple drops in here using our palette knife. And you really just want to mix it so that it has a little bit of mobility. It's not super stiff. This looks really good. You scrape your palette knife through and it kind of falls to fill it in. Is sort of what you're looking for with the consistency of the EZ Strokes. So again, pulling the palette knife and it falls to fill it in. Go ahead and mix our blue turquoise up. Here I'm using the chartreuse and blue turquoise EZ Strokes. All right, so we've got those mixed up. See, it falls into the thing you scrape it in. All right, we have our EZ Strokes prepared. And this technique is kind of fun because it's a little bit free form. Here, I just kind of free-handed this design. This design I found to be pretty easy to do because you can just kind of work backwards. I think it would be really fun to do this in a variety of ways. You could do like a spiral. So if I were to do a spiral, I would start on the outside and work my way in. And then you can do this in all sorts of different directions, whatever kind of flows for you. You can make these into flowers. It doesn't have to be this abstract thing, really. So I'm gonna condition my script liner first. I think the key to the success with this technique is really using a script liner. This brush is really nice because it plumps up really well, but you have a lot of control with it because you can get it down to this nice fine tip. So starting off, I'm just going to make sure my brush is nice and loaded with the chartreuse EZ Stroke. And once it's loaded up with that, I'm just going to pull it through the blue turquoise. So to make a brush stroke, basically I'll just push down with my brush here and twist and pull as I get to the end there. So I'll do this a few more times with the same loading. Because you could see that first one, it was kind of heavy, honestly. So I'll load it up again. A nice fat end and pulling up as I twist. And I like to work away so that you can kind of build it over those ends there. And making this nice and loaded is sort of the key to getting that nice round end on there. Because if it's plumped up really well, then you can have it be round on the end there. So here's just a bunch of random brush strokes, essentially. It's kind of fun, especially to build this up into a design because it's so loose. So like here, I'll kind of do those little tails that I did, but with blue. So I'm just gonna get the blue here. Making that little tail. I don't know why I'm calling it that. And then we finish off with a little thing. So that's just like the quick and easy brush stroke application there. It goes pretty fast once you get the brush stroke down, especially building like a random design like this. So we have our brush stroke applied. And next we're gonna add the detailing with the black. So this is really what makes it pop and kind of makes your design more solid. So we can get our EZ Stroke Cobalt Jet Black. I use the EZ Cobalt Jet Black instead of the EZ37. I can't remember the name, but it's another black because this one does not turn brown using a zinc bearing clear. So I used the SW001 Our Stoneware Clear on this to cover the design. And the EZ12 does not turn brown, whereas the EZ37 will turn brown. The EZ37 requires a zinc-free clear for it to remain black. So just keep that in mind. And I'll add my thin and shade to the black here. It's getting up in the wrong color there. All right, and I'll probably still end up pulling my brush through water because I just do that with line work. It really helps it flow off of the brush really well. So I'm using our 110 mini liner here. And I love this because it has this long brush end here, and that can load up really easily with glaze. So it helps your lines be longer. All right, so I'll start here with just a really sort of loose outline. And then I'll build it up with a variation with the thickness to create more of a design with it. But first I'll get this outline first to kind of give me a good shape to be working with that is a little bit more natural. I think that if I built these up too early, that my design would get to be kind of stiff. So starting general and working to be more specific works better for that. Got a little fat guy on the end there. That's kind of the fun part about this design though. You get to practice different brush strokes and applications. Without being too precise. So as you can see here, this brush is awesome for applying lines. Just kind of keeping it coated with water and pulling it through so that the full end of the brush is loaded with glaze. And that's how you get these smooth, continued lines. All right, so I've got my rough line work there. So I'm going to start building it up and creating a little bit more variation. So that will help me fill in these gaps here, as well as create a designed area for me to add dots or anything else that I want to put on there. So first thing I'm going to do is fill in these gaps. So sometimes that ends up with being really thick lines. And that's how I know I'm going to put white dots there. And so this design, I kept towards this top edge here too. That's really helpful actually moving forward, because if you apply the gray opal too thick above this design, it will sag down a little bit. So having a small amount of space for glaze to build up there sort of helps just naturally avoid that without making your piece look streaky or glaze starved or anything like that. So that's a little cheater tip there to pay attention to when you're applying the design. Alrighty, we're starting to get built up here. I'm gonna fill this guy in, that'll be a fun spot. And we'll finish up these little guys here. Sweet. All right, I'll make this guy fat. Close up some lines there. I don't know. All right. So here's our design. And then we can go ahead and add our white dots. I'm just gonna go ahead and use the white full strength because I don't really need it to move and I want it to be nice and bright. So straight out of the jar it is. So let's start adding dots where we have thick lines. hard to find the balance for making sure you don't overdo the dots. I think they always look kind of nice though. Man. All right, I'll do a few more. That'll be the last ones. Just like 3 little ones. Cool. All right, so we have these dots in there. This other piece had a couple little extra swirls on it, which get covered with the gray opal, but they are a little bit visible through it. So I'm just gonna do them because they're fun. All right, cool. So that is our design. To proceed, there are a couple different things that you can do. First thing you could do is allow this design to dry completely and then apply wax resist over the design. And then apply gray opal around the design. So that's definitely one method to do it. I personally am just going to apply the gray opal around the design, and that is because a lot of the time when you're applying a wax resist and it resists, basically you end up with a pool of glaze around the edge of it, and I kind of want to avoid that because I don't want this gray opal to sag down into my design. So to have more control of the amount of glaze going over top of this design, I am going to apply the gray opal by hand. And actually I just realized I forgot all these little lines in the design, so I'm going to apply those really quick. This actually kind of makes the design way cooler. I don't know how I forgot about them. And it's super fun. It makes the whole image way more dynamic. Okay, cool. There, I added them. Pretty fun. And really easy to add. All right, so we're just gonna go in with this gray opal. Applying 3 coats. Because I'm applying this around a design, and this is a translucent glaze, I don't want this to be streaky. So in order to avoid it being streaky, I'm going to make sure to have consistent variation with my brush strokes. So creating a lot of variation kind of helps have that background pattern not be streaky, because if I was just doing it, applying the gray opal the same way every time, I might end up with it being streaky because it's hard to get the same thickness when you're going around a design. So that's kind of like the weird part up there. And then down here, I can have a little bit more liberal of an application because it's not going to flow over my design. And this script liner is great for this because it gets loaded really well, so it applies a good coat of glaze since it plumps up so nicely. So here you can see sort of that consistent variation that I had mentioned. So it'll be nice and tight around the design, and then create some nice variation here. You could switch it up and use a fan on this side too if you wanted. I like to just use the same brush again, keeping things kind of consistent. So yeah, there we have our first coat. So I'll set that down for a second and let it dry, and then we can apply our next coat. All right, here we have our first coat that's nice and dried. We can go ahead and apply our second coat here. So I'm doing 2 coats up to the design, and by the time I do the third coat, I probably won't butt up to the design at the top. Alrighty, so here we are going to apply our third coat of gray opal. And this coat I'm going to apply a little bit looser to really nail down that consistent variation that happens with this glaze so that we don't end up with a streaky mug. So I'm not going to get too tight on the design here. This glaze does have a little bit of mobility, so it's kind of forgiving with the variation in this application here. I'm just going to go ahead and add a little bit of glaze up here. Again, I don't want to add too much and end up with it running. So that's the application there. It's kind of loose. Finishing up that third coat. All right. So once we have our third coat of glaze here, put that to the side, and then here I'm going to apply the stoneware clear over our design. And when I'm doing the stoneware clear, number one, because I've tested these with zinc, these EZ Strokes with zinc, and they are not reactive with zinc bearing clears, so you're good to go using the stoneware clear. And then also because EZ Strokes performs kind of similar to an underglaze in the sense that they are not going to fire glossy. They're going to have a similar finish to an underglaze. Some of them do flux at cone 6, but for the most part, you're going to want to have a clear glaze on them. And even the ones that flux don't necessarily do so consistently or to the point of a full gloss. And I'm putting this clear on before I do my black on the inside, just so that I can hold my piece like this. If I had glazed the inside with black, it could be damp, so I would have to kind of wait longer to apply this. And I would recommend probably 2 coats of the clear glaze here, since we're applying it to a design. 2 coats is great to ensure a nice even application and that you have enough everywhere. I'm not super strict with this overlapping the gray opal. They don't really tend to react a lot together, and it's kind of nice almost to have a sort of halo around the design. All right, so we'll let that dry for a little bit. While that's drying, I can go ahead and start applying the black gloss to the handles. So we're doing all of the work on the outside of the mug, and then we'll do all the work on the inside of the mug. So here I have my black gloss. Using my script liner. And we're gonna apply 3 coats of black gloss to all the details. And by all the details, I mean the handle and the inside. And black gloss is a highly gloss, opaque stoneware glaze. So you don't have to worry about inconsistencies with your application. As long as you have enough glaze on it, it's gonna look the same everywhere. The only variation that happens is if you have like a glaze starved area, basically. All right, so we've got our 1 coat on the handle here. And it looks like we can apply our 2nd coat of clear to the design. Cool. 2 coats of stoneware clear over the EZ Strokes. We'll add our 2nd coat to our handle here. I'm gonna set this aside so I don't accidentally mix it up like I almost did. And our 2nd coat. Great. We have our 2nd coat of black gloss on the handle. And I'm going to go ahead and start applying it to the inside. I'm going to use our soft fan brush. That first coat, I'm a little bit more meticulous than I am with the 2nd coat, in particular around the rim. This first coat sort of just sets where my other coats are gonna sit. All right, so Got it wrapped around the rim a little bit here. Maybe even that out. Sweet. All right. Got my first coat. Second coat's drying on the handle. I'm just gonna send it with the third coat on the handle. Third coat, I definitely loosen up a bit once I've defined those lines with my first and second coat. With something this opaque, I'll usually just not even go all the way to the lines. By the time I get to the third. All right, so that's 3 coats there. So we can apply our second coat to the inside here. And while that is drying, go ahead and clean up the base. Gets rid of any glaze on the base so we don't have anything sticking to the kiln shelf. Gray Opal is a relatively stable glaze. If you do build it up a lot, really close to the bottom, you could definitely end up with some mobility there. All right, so here we are going to go ahead and apply our next coat of black gloss. And that makes 3 coats on this piece here. All right, and there you have it. This guy, we're gonna go ahead and fire to cone 6, and it'll look pretty much like this one here. So thank you guys so much for tuning in today. We really appreciate you taking the time. Hopefully you learned something fun and new about these products or brushing technique. So feel free to leave any questions or comments below in the comments. We love hearing from you guys. And as always, make it Mako.